There are already people who believe that if Arch Manning was given the runway to stay in the game for the entire game, that Texas might have even won in the second half. Just because he didn't score on the two drives.
Wait,
are you on the internet?
I want to meet them because they're really stupid if they watched that performance and thought Texas would win if he stayed in the game.
Who thought that Arch should have come into the Oklahoma game before this change was made. So all I'm saying is that there is an existence out there that when Texas is losing, and if Quinn is not playing well, that there should be a change made because the coach, through the action of what he did by putting a backup quarterback in, told the world that he thought that in that moment, the backup quarterback could provide something to his team that his starter could not. And when you do that, you are creating an environment where there is some question about who the quarterback on your team is. And
if your team quarterbacks are soft, that will bother you. But if your team and your quarterbacks are not soft, that won't matter because they will understand their job's to win the game. And if one of them is not,
presumably you would think that's the case for Texas, right?
Then you put the other guy in and see if he can do better.
And you would think that Quinn has been in college long enough for that to be the case, right? Like, we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I don't think Quinn Ewers is soft, okay?
I think what Quinn Ewers showed you when he came back in the second half is that he understands that. Like, I thought he handled that really well.
I wonder if this is going to materialize again. And I think that the door has been cracked open to allow this to become a thing. So whether or not you don't, that's fine.
It's not a thing as long as whatever they do gives them the best chance to actually win the game. It doesn't matter what they do.
But what if Quinn throws a pick in a big game because he doesn't want to get yanked? I think that could happen.
Again, he's not soft. You saw him come back and he was better.
But you don't think that the thought process of I need to make a play on this drive, even if it's subconscious, because you are worried of being pulled out of the game, that makes you make a bad decision in a big game?
He was pulled out of the game because he was not capable of doing anything in that moment. The offense was pathetic at that moment. They had to try something else. If you're in a game and you've had some success and you happen to throw a pick, you're not getting pulled over that. The offense was non-functional. That's why they made the change.
And then the response to the non-functional offense was to do it again. Then.
Well, no. Arch came in and was also non-functional, so they went back to the more experienced guy who might make it functional. And lo and behold, it was functional.
And then he made it functional, which calls into question the decision in the first place, which is the thing that we keep coming back to.
See, you want to make this a big deal, and it's not. It's a big deal because it's Arch Manning, and when we talk about Arch Manning on the internet, people watch it and click on it. But it's not a big deal in the realm of Steve Sarkisian's job is to win the game. The offense was sucking, so they made a change. The offense still sucked, so they changed back, and the offense stopped sucking. So it all worked out.
Okay, we'll see. I understand what you're saying. Like, I don't even know that
you're thinking you're dealing with feelings, and I'm dealing with results. That's the thing. We don't even have Texas and Vanderbilt as a game we're going to pick, but let's pick it anyway. Let's add it to the list, Ari.
It's kind of a tricky game.
I had a personal experience with Game Time just yesterday. My wife wakes up yesterday morning and says, I think I'm going to take our daughter to the Eras Tour concert in Miami tonight. And I'm like, excuse me? You're going to do what? We don't live that close to Miami. Miami's 6 hours away. The concert started at 7 p.m. Eastern time. This is 8 a.m. Eastern time. We don't have tickets to one of the most sought-after concerts that stadium has ever seen. What are we going to do? We got on Game Time, and folks, I'm telling you, you hit that GT Picks feature, and you will see the best values relative to the market. So when it came up initially, there are a bunch of seats, and I'm like, I don't know if these seats are going to be any good. So if you're watching, there's a photo of Taylor Swift that my wife took from where they were sitting. They were close enough for Taylor Swift to sweat on them. My daughter gave Taylor Swift's mom a bracelet because Taylor Swift's mom was sitting behind them. That's the ticket we got on Game Time the day of the concert. And I found it using that GT Picks feature because I said, okay, I don't know where these are relative. And I actually did look at some of the competitors' apps just to make sure we were looking at the best deals. And Game Time, by the way, gave us the best deal. And the GT Picks feature gave us the absolute best deal on the best seat that we could possibly find. It was amazing. Thank you to Game Time, because that's something my daughter is always going to remember. And if you use Game Time, download that app, use the code STAPLES, $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, of course. Yeah.
Coming off of that I mean, like, because like also too, there's one thing that I wanted to point out that I haven't really seen, but you watched, I assume, the Sarkisian press conference, and you watched the Ewers availability after the game.
Yeah.
And what Sark said about what happened with the benching and what Quinn said about what happened with the benching were not the same. And I don't know if that was just like them trying to answer questions to get out of here, but like I thought that was kind of weird. Like, he did not tell Quinn he said he told Quinn going into the locker room that, you know, they're going to give him a break and he's going to start the second half. Then Quinn said that did not happen. So like I don't know what's going on there, but I think that's kind of bizarre. And maybe it was just a miscommunication. I'm overthinking it, but like that, Quinn Ewers' body language after that game was not like he looked like a defeated human. And maybe it was because he was literally just defeated.
Probably because he just got defeated.
But like, all I'm saying is before the game on Saturday, Andy, we thought that Texas could be the number one team in the country. Not only did they lose to Georgia, but there has been doubt, whether you want to acknowledge it or not, implanted in the fan base and people who probably are on the team, that Quinn Ewers is the best quarterback on the team. And you think that that's been disproven because Arch Manning didn't score a touchdown.
I didn't say it was disproven. Arch Manning still may be the best quarterback. Like, ultimately, Arch Manning may be a better quarterback than Quinn Ewers.
And that's it, because we're going to have to find that out probably. And we're going to,
but here's the thing, Ari, and this is why I don't worry about it. They're both good. Texas is going to be good no matter which one of them plays. Like, this isn't a case of there's one guy who's a great college quarterback, and then there's this young guy who's going to be the best quarterback who ever played. Like, they're both good. They're both going to be NFL quarterbacks. It's not that big of a deal,
and you
because either one of them is going to be good.
Your skill in this is better than mine, okay? Because you have the ability to recall things that happened like this, right? Is there a situation where a team benched a quarterback that was as good or as proven or as at least as seasoned as Quinn in the middle of the game for a younger player? And then that team turned out to go back to the person who was benched and they won the national title. Like, I'm trying to remember if that. I'm not remembering that. I'm trying to think of
it's
a bizarre, because it is kind of a bizarre thing. Because like, even though like it's easy, like I think what you're saying,
you usually don't have those situations. Like the Florida 2006 situation was interesting. Like, I remember in the Kentucky game of the 2006 season, the only reason I remember this is I was a beat writer and we had to write about this whole situation. So don't think it's like some super. He pulled something from the Kentucky game in 2006. Like, in that game, Urban Meyer puts Tebow in for a whole drive. And usually they had just kind of put him in spot duty to either run the ball or run like a trick play. And this is the first time in a real game, in the context of the game, not in mop-up duty, they'd put him in for a drive. And he takes him down the field, and they get into the red zone, and he pulls Tebow and puts Chris Leak in, and the fans boo. And it's because they didn't like Chris Leak and they like Tebow better. But it was weird in that moment, because you're like, wait, is maybe Tim Tebow better?
But at least even that was like kind of a duel. Like, both of them played all year, right? Like,
it was. And they had Tebow had a defined role on that team. It was not this situation where either one is the guy if you put him in.
Because on one hand, what you're saying, I don't even know that I even disagree with it. Like, yeah, they weren't playing very well. They removed a quarterback. They put someone
You're
else
just
in.
Mad because I don't think it's a huge deal. And you think it could be something that,
even if it's not a huge deal, do you think it's bizarre? Like, do you think?
I don't think it's bizarre. I think
you don't really see quarterbacks with as much reps and as many games
the
under
offense
their belt getting
was
pulled out of a game
at that point, Ari.
I know, but teams have bad games and bad halves. They don't pull their quarterback out all the time.
Not that bad. Like, That is as bad as Texas has looked on offense since Sark got the job. So when you're in an extreme situation like that, sometimes you have to take an extreme action. And
but it's also interesting because
I really don't think, because I don't think Sark put Arch in there to prove the point that Arch is going to have as much trouble as Quinn has had so far.
That would be crazy.
I think he thought maybe Arch would be better. And then when he wasn't, he's like, okay.
But if the head coach of the team thinks that Arch might be better in that moment, he might have to think about that again.
I mean, Arch might be better.
I know.
That's really the facts of the situation.
Because I actually thought when that happened that there was a chance that Arch Manning was going to lead a touchdown drive in those, because Texas's offense is typically pretty good.
You were just like, this is going to make our show the best. Like, because if Arch had led them back to a victory, we'd have had the most watched show we've ever had.
If Arch would have led a touchdown drive in his 2 possessions, and also too, he had 2 possessions in 4 minutes and 43 seconds remaining in the first half. It's not like the runway there to like really settle in was given, right? Like he had 2 quick possessions. He fumbled the ball, like, get it. But if he would have led a touchdown drive, does Quinn come back into the game at all? And if he would have led a touchdown drive, would Quinn come back into the game ever? Like, again?
No.
Like we were like, that's what we were flirting with there. So
Producer River came up with the situation, by the way. And he's right. And I can't believe I didn't remember this one. It's a little bit different, but Hurts and Tua, 2017, Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa at Alabama. So in that, going into that Orange Bowl, there was basically a near mutiny, because remember, Jalen Hurts got sick before the Orange Bowl. And so Tua was taking a lot of first team reps at practice. And at the time, Jalen was not as good of a thrower as he is now. Like, I think his time with Oklahoma and Lincoln Riley turned him into a better thrower. But he was a bit erratic as a thrower. And then Tua comes in as a freshman, taking the first team reps at practice, and the ball never hits the ground. And there was this, I remember one of the receivers saying something in the run up to that Orange Bowl, like, basically, I'm tired of this. And so there was a near mutiny with Alabama. Now they got through that, or excuse me, the Sugar Bowl. It was the Sugar Bowl when they played Clemson in New Orleans.
This is the semifinal game, not the national title game, right?
This is the semifinal game. Yeah. Yes. And so they get in that situation, and obviously they crushed Clemson in the game. It didn't matter what the offense did because the defense was so dominant. But the seeds had been planted at that point. And so I think Nick Saban knew if things were going bad, he was going to Tua. And that's why he did that at halftime in the national title game, because things were going bad. And I think he would have never hesitated had Tua not started moving the ball. Remember, Tua had a pick or a 3-and-out. The first drive wasn't great, but it didn't take long for the offense to start moving better. So he left Tua in. But I think if Tua had been ineffective for like half the third quarter, they would have brought Jalen back in. So David in the chat with a great question. How many teams had the luxury of having 2 NFL draft level QBs on the roster for this debate to even happen? That's a great question.
That's why I'm bringing it up. That's why I even bring it up to begin with, because it's so rare that this is even a situation right now that, like, we do spend an inordinate amount of time talking about Arch Manning for obvious reasons. And we've done a lot of time talking about how well Sark handled this. And I don't know if you can say he's handled it well anymore. Like, now it's like, everything that he did. I have no problem saying he's handled it
fine, because again, what makes it rare also makes it not that big of a deal, because they're both good.
Well, and one's probably just not going to leave no matter what you do, right? Like, that's like the thing that is just different about the Tua situation. And I even wrote about this today on On3.
Yeah, you're going to lose one of them. Yeah.
Well, also, too, you had a half of football left in the season. So, like, after that was over, like, it wasn't like you had to go out and try to, like, lick your wounds and get better. Like, they had to win that game to win a national title or lose, and the season was over. Like, there's the entire second half of the year is still here. Texas still wants to win a national championship, and now you have like I've covered teams and you've covered teams that have had a identity crisis in terms of who should be leading the team. And like that usually doesn't play out well. Like I covered the Braxton Miller, Cardale Jones, JT Barrett three-headed quarterback monster. And like that team, though the most talented team in college football that year, like ended up like never finding itself offensively because it didn't know who it was. And I'm not saying that's going to happen to Texas, but I do think that like not having clear identifiable roles on the team can muddy the waters and make things weird. And I think that, and it's like not even like saying it's a big deal because Sark has to answer questions about it in this news conference now for the rest of the year. It's a big deal about whether or not Quinn is shaken or the roster is divided on who they think in practice is.
I don't think the roster is divided because I think they both think they're good. So this is another thing that I don't think you have to worry about. Like that Alabama situation, the players were mad. The receivers wanted Tua. Like this is not that. They're both good.
Yeah.
Now, we may find out later if one just completely outshines the other, that one was better. But right now, I don't think they seem that different. And I would imagine if you polled all the Texas players anonymously, do you think both of these guys give you a chance to win games? They'd be like, yeah, we can play with both of them.
Yeah, maybe it's just clear cut and we won't talk about it anymore, but let's
I think we've talked about two of the quarterbacks in this game. We haven't talked about the other one, and he deserves some conversation.
You should write a column this week exploring the question of whether or not Diego Pavia would be the best quarterback on Texas's roster this year if he got moved over. That would be a good Vanderbilt's
the biggest dog on Texas's roster for sure.
And like, let's be honest, I'm fairly certain that Texas lost to Georgia because they were looking ahead to Vanderbilt. So like, let's like like through the lens of that game, like, hey, Vandy is a top 25 team and they're catching 17.5 at home after the most demoralizing game of like the last 2 years for Texas. Like, this is a interesting spot for me.
This is a very interesting spot. I think listen, Diego Pavia is a dog, and I don't doubt him in any situation. I think Texas will show up prepared. I think this will be a clear eyes and full heart situation for Texas. Because I think they got woken up by Georgia. Like, oh, this is different. And look, they beat the SEC champ last year. So it's not a like, welcome to the SEC moment. Sometimes there are going to be games where you're playing against some dudes and it ain't going to work out for you. It's not going to go your way and you got to figure out how to deal with it. I think they're going to understand that they have to really show up to play every week. And this is a situation where Vandy's not sneaking up on you now. They've already beaten Alabama and Kentucky. Like, they're good. They're not some plucky, cute story. They're good. And 17.5 is a lot of points, Ari. But I actually think Texas is going to take this as seriously as they should. And I think they cover here.
Yeah, I think Vanderbilt probably is in a situation where, like, God, I wish Texas would have just beaten Georgia. Coming off an emotional win, like feeling 100%. Good about themselves. Like, I don't know that the team that is humbled and upset right now is not going to be out for blood the following week. Now, 17.5 points is a lot of points. And we're talking about this game being at home, which is the toughest crowd to play in front of in America. So we are, before you tweet at me, that was a joke. They just proved that they could beat Alabama at home 3 weeks ago. They probably are going to come into this game believing they can beat Texas. And I think I'm inclined to say that Texas wins the game. I don't know that I'm inclined to say that they cover the spread. Where are you at with this?
I say Texas covers, but if you want to take Vandy to cover, you go right ahead.
No, I think Texas covers. I think that the magic. Yeah. I think Texas is, if they come out playing their best football or angry football, I think Texas is probably a lot better than Alabama still. I don't know if your thought process has changed on the Longhorns. There's a lot of who's Texas beaten? Are they a mirage conversation out there? And I'm still firmly on they're one of the most complete teams in the country bandwagon. And the Alabama story for Vanderbilt is certainly heartwarming and fun, but I don't think that the Alabama victory would be, like, I think it's more unlikely that Vanderbilt could beat this Texas team than that Alabama team. So I'm going to go with Texas, and I think they might win by 20 or so points.